Hey friends, today I'm talking about the Minecraft movie. Steve enters a world where creativity means survival, but an evil piglin queen, Malgosa, threatens the overworld, and it's up to Steve and his friends to stop her. Let's see how they do it. The film begins by introducing us to Steve, a young boy who always dreamed of becoming the world's greatest miner. However, every time he tried to enter the village mine, a grumpy old miner stopped him, citing the rule that children weren't allowed inside. Years passed, and Steve finally grew up. But his life turned out far different from what he'd imagined. He worked selling doorknobs and felt time slipping through his fingers. One day, while eating lunch, he recalled the childhood dream he'd long set aside. So, he decided to return to the mine. This time, Steve was certain nothing and no one could stop him. And that's exactly how it went. Despite another encounter with the old man, he managed to sneak inside and started digging with such enthusiasm, as if trying to make up for lost time. During his excavations, he uncovered two mysterious objects, a crystalline cube and another called the Cube of Creation. By combining them, he opened a portal to an astonishing world, the Overworld, or more simply, the world of Minecraft. Once there, he realized anything was possible. Steve built his first house out of dirt and even found a pink sheep, using its wool to craft a proper home. During one of his adventures, he encountered a stray dog that initially tried to attack him. But with a tasty bone, Steve tamed it and made it his best friend, naming it Dennis. Over the months, they built countless structures together, creeper villages, mining farms, and more. Days turned into weeks until Steve stumbled upon ruins with a carefully hidden chest. Inside was an obsidian block. Placing it in the right spot and setting it alight, Steve created a new portal leading to an underground realm known as the Nether. This fiery world is inhabited by piglins, ambitious creatures loyal to a witch named Malgosa. If you're wondering why she turned evil, here's the reason. As a child, Malgosa dreamed of becoming a great dancer. But when her father found out, he cast her out of the house, deeming her a disgrace. This filled her with nothing but hatred for life, and now her goal is to seize the Cube of Creation to bend all worlds to her will. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Steve acted swiftly. He entrusted the cube to Dennis, giving him clear instructions. The dog was to return to Earth and hide the cube in a place no one could find. Dennis carried out the task, passing through the portal and stashing the powerful object under Steve's bed. Years later, we meet Garrett, a young man who revolutionized video games, rising to fame as the star of a popular arcade game. His knack for perfectly tossing trash into bins earned him the nickname Trash Man. His popularity soared, landing him a multi-million-dollar contract. He had it all until an eviction notice drove him to bankruptcy. Desperate to rebuild his finances, he decided to visit an auction, hoping to find a valuable item to resell. The auction began, and after a brief bidding war, Garrett bought a container with a rare old video game for $900. But upon opening the box, he found no game, just the Cube of Creation, its purpose completely unknown to him. Then the film introduces us to Henry and his older sister, Natalie. They're moving to a new town after their mother's painful death, as Natalie has secured a new job and a house with remarkably low rent. Upon arrival, they're greeted by Dawn, a friendly realtor who also works at the zoo. The next morning, Natalie makes a pizza for Henry to share at school and help him make friends. Back to Garrett. He's sorting through old items in his shop when Henry suddenly shows up, offering a slice of pizza in exchange for some advice. Garrett, introducing himself as an expert in the game called Life, tells him that friends are like a puzzle. Sometimes you have all the pieces to support you, and sometimes you're missing the one key piece to feel whole. Inspired by his words, Henry hands over the pizza and heads to school. There, the principal greets him, handing him a name badge. During their chat, she admits her marriage has long been broken, but they stay together for the sake of their beloved dog. Later, Henry enters the classroom and, after meeting the teacher, discovers that two bullies have sabotaged his project. This causes his prototype jetpack to malfunction, crashing right into the factory where Natalie works. Alarmed by the incident, the principal asks Henry to call his guardian. Since it's his first day and no one knows him, he calls Garrett, offering $26 for him to pose as his uncle. Henry spots the strange cube and asks Garrett about it. Garrett says he's selling it for $95 since he has no clue what it's for. But while rummaging through his shop, he finds an old manual that explains Well, after reading it, they combine the cube with a box, landing them right in the abandoned mine where Steve once found it. Meanwhile, Natalie notices Henry hasn't come home. Deeply worried and unsure who to turn to, she calls Dawn. Using a tracking app, Dawn locates Henry and rushes to the scene. When she arrives, she sees Henry with the cube, which begins generating a portal with its energy. Once the portal fully forms, it sucks them all in, and they find themselves in the Overworld, stunned because they've literally stepped into another world. Garrett reintroduces himself as a video game legend. Soon he meets the famous pink sheep from the trailer, while a curious villager steps through the portal into the real world. Meanwhile, in the Nether, the piglins are growing tired of failing to find more gold. Sensing this, Malgosa warns them that if they don't deliver, she'll turn them into pork feasts. As she finishes her speech, she detects the cube's energy reactivating. She immediately confronts Steve, whom she's held captive all this time, and offers him freedom on one condition. If he wants to save his dear dog, Dennis, whom she claims to have imprisoned, he must retrieve the Cube of Creation. Back in the Overworld, Garrett is trying to chat with the pink sheep when Dennis suddenly races in, letting out a heart-wrenching howl. The sheep bolts, and silence falls over the scene. Within moments, skeletons, giant spiders, zombies, and creepers begin attacking them. In a panic, Henry realizes they can use the blocks around them in this world. He quickly starts chopping trees and building shelters to protect his friends. Garrett, meanwhile, opts to hide. But a creeper explodes nearby, and his loud scream draws even more zombies. As the sheep is devoured, the group manages to save Garrett. Just when all seems lost, Steve appears, cutting down every enemy he can until the sun rises. And, as we all know, the monsters start to burn. Safe at last, Steve explains he's come for the Cube of Creation and promises to return them to Earth in exchange for it. The only problem? During the zombie fight, the crystalline box shattered, and if they want to get home, they'll need to find a new one in a woodland mansion. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the villager who crossed through the portal runs into the school principal. Mortified and fearing a lawsuit, she tries to smooth things over by inviting him to dinner, confessing that lately, everyone seems to want to sue her. Back to our heroes. They arrive at a village populated by friendly villagers. There, they also meet a legendary piglet, a clear nod to Technoblade, and a massive iron golem who protects the village at the cost of its life. To regain their strength, they join the villagers for some roasted chicken. Though Steve warns Garrett to let it cool since it was cooked with lava, Garrett ignores him. Elsewhere, we see Malgosa, furious at her failures, make a drastic move. She summons her army's mightiest general, Changus, the strongest yet oddly adorable piglin. Malgosa orders him to seize the Cube of Creation at all costs. Before sending him off, she gives him a potion to prevent him from turning into a zombie when crossing the portal. Meanwhile, in the Overworld, the group prepares to head to the mansion, but first stops by Steve's house to grab some tools. Among them, Garrett finds a mythical end pearl, a pearl that can teleport its owner wherever it's thrown. Steve teaches them how to craft new tools. Using a crafting table, Garrett makes his weapon, though it turns out to be just 2 buckets. Henry, meanwhile, combines real-world items with game materials to create something like a potato launcher. Alone with Steve, Garrett says he wants to renegotiate their deal. In exchange for the cube, Steve must lead him to this world's treasures as he refuses to return to Earth still broke. Hearing this, Steve admits he has a stash of diamonds in a mine, and Garrett makes it clear that if he doesn't hand them over, the cube stays with him. Just as they're about to leave, piglins interrupt them. General Changus steps before the group, and though his voice sounds friendly, Steve warns the others that he could wipe them out in an instant. Steve tries to take control, but Garrett acts faster, charging at the general with his 2 buckets and, predictably, losing the fight. Chaos erupts in the village as everyone starts battling, and in the heat of it, Natalie and Dawn end up on one side, while Garrett, Steve, and Henry are on the other. Before splitting up, they agree to meet at the mansion. To aid their escape, Steve gives Garrett and Henry a pair of elytra wings, but realizing he only has 2, he leaps toward Garrett to flee with him. Thus begins an epic aerial chase. They soar through walls, dodge gassed attacks, pull off dazzling maneuvers to evade the piglin army, and even make a water landing to touch down safely. Back on Earth, the principal accidentally bumps into the villager Akhenaton at dinner. Over the meal, she confesses she recently divorced her husband, explaining she left him for his lack of character. Meanwhile, deep in the Nether, Malgosa berates General Changus for his failure before unleashing her ultimate weapon, the Great Pig, a colossal beast recently given a brain transplant. The creature awakens in a rage, instantly obliterating Changus, then receives Malgosa's command to fetch her the cube. On the flip side, Natalie and Dawn encounter Dennis, Steve's legendary dog. Recognizing him, Dawn offers a bone to gain his trust, and the dog lets them approach. Knowing Dennis belongs to Steve, the women decide to follow him, hoping he'll lead them to the others. Meanwhile, the guys finally reach the diamond-filled mine. But Steve, with his keen senses honed from years of mining, catches a strange scent, the unmistakable whiff of the Great Pig. He urgently tells the others to run, and they hop into minecarts to speed away. But at the worst possible moment, the redstone powering the rails runs out, stopping them dead in front of a creeper farm. As if that weren't enough, the Great Pig appears and surrounds them, forcing the heroes to make a desperate move. Steve and Garrett start punching creepers to trigger a massive explosion, collapsing the entire mine. Though risky, the plan works, and they emerge from the rubble and smoke. Now safe, tension flares between Henry and Garrett. Henry angrily accuses Garrett of nearly getting them killed. Garrett coolly replies that he needed the diamonds. It's his only way out of the ruins of his life. But they eventually reconcile and devise a plan to storm the mansion. According to Steve, it's split into 3 levels. The ground floor is guarded by warrior villagers defending the place. The second level houses evokers, powerful mages who can summon eerie creatures, while the third holds the crystal they need, protected by an enderman. Before they can execute the plan, the villagers capture the adults, forcing them into an underground fight club. Steve is tied up, and Garrett is pitted against a baby zombie riding a chicken. Meanwhile, Henry sneaks into the third-floor vault and steals the coveted crystal, only to come face-to-face with the Enderman. With no choice, he grabs a diamond axe found in the mansion to defend himself. The battle is fierce, but with grit and agility. Henry defeats the fearsome creature and claims his prize. Exhausted but nearing their goal, the group leaves the mansion and confronts their worst enemy, Malgosa. She's tracked them using the cube's magical energy. With a cruel smile, she snatches the cube of creation and the Enderman's crystal, leaving them no chance to fight back. Seeing their weakened state, Steve and Henry try to flee, knowing they can't reclaim the cube, but Garrett stops and declares, "If I'm going down fighting." Moments later, he triggers a massive TNT blast, destroying much of the bridge and keeping the piglins from finishing off his friends. The shockwave hurls Steve and Henry far from the mansion, landing them among the trees. Soon, Dennis wakes Steve, who slowly comes to. Henry stirs too, and it turns out Dawn has built a shelter inside a mushroom. At that moment, Malgosa uses the cube to plunge the overworld into darkness, letting her piglins rule without turning into zombies. Knowing they have one shot to reclaim the cube, the heroes start crafting stronger, more advanced tools. Henry devises a strategy: build an army of iron golems and equip one with super speed boots, forming a legion of iron titans ready to face the piglin hordes. Seeing them approach, Malgosa laughs, aware that golems only attack when provoked. But a young, impulsive piglet strikes first, sparking an epic battle. More furious than ever, Malgosa unleashes her deadliest weapon, the Great Pig. She didn't account for the hero's creation, an ultra-powerful golem, even bigger and more fearsome. The two titanic beings clash in a battle that shakes the overworld. Steve faces Malgosa in full diamond armor. Despite his imposing presence, the witch remains calm, confident her dark magic outmatches any weapon. On the other side of the battlefield, Henry uses the end pearl to reach the cube. Natalie is left alone, and as the Great Pig briefly turns from its fight, it nearly crushes her. Luckily, Dawn arrives with over 20 tamed wolves, who swarm the pig and save Natalie. In the midst of the final battle, the Great Pig unleashes a furious energy beam that strikes Henry, knocking him out and sending him plummeting over 50 blocks. Actually, that's not true. Garrett saves Henry. Turns out he survived the TNT blast by water landing just before it went off. Wasting no time, the heroes sync up and dismantle Malgosa's fortress. As the cube falls to the ground, the great pig snags it, but light begins to return. When all seems lost, the ultra-powerful golem lands a blow so mighty, it defeats the beast, returning the cube of creation to the hero's hands. With the cube back and sunlight zombifying the remaining piglins, Steve stands before a weakened Malgosa, looks her in the eye, and says, "I've finally beaten you." Though the witch tries 3 times to trick him and stab him, she fails and meets the same fate as her piglins. After defeating the villain, Steve bids farewell to the group. He invites Henry to stay, but Henry chooses to return to his world. Steve respects his decision and reunites with his loyal dog, Dennis. But then he makes a big choice. He entrusts Dennis to Dawn to protect and accompany her back to Earth. Then Steve says goodbye to Garrett, who honors him as a great friend and brave warrior. He also thanks Natalie and Dawn for their courage, watches them pass through the portal, and, about to return to his solitary life in the Overworld, pauses for a moment, reflects, and ultimately steps through the portal to Earth. A few days later, everything has changed. Garrett has leveled up, and his shop is now wildly successful. He's a master of trade and video games. Together with the group, they've created an epic new video game based on their adventures. Life finally feels perfect. Dawn has left her realtor career behind and now lives for endless adventures with Dennis, spreading joy everywhere. Natalie has opened self-defense classes and become a key figure in her community. Henry finally got his jetpack working and soars freely in the skies, fulfilling his greatest dream to never stop crafting. The principal and the Overworld villager have become a couple. Astonishingly, they now speak human languages, and she's learned to communicate like an Overworld villager, and so ends the Minecraft movie. Thanks for your attention, and until next time.